Democratic Delaware Senator Chris Coons, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, it's great to have you with us. First, your response to this statement that has just come out from President-elect Donald Trump, and I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see it, but at least you've heard a little bit about it on our air. He's saying it's time for the country to move on to bigger and better things, but nonetheless, he is going to be briefed by intelligence officials next week. How do you read that statement?
I mean, that's an incredible statement. It's just unbelievable to me that President-elect Trump can say it's time to move on to bigger and better things. There is no bigger and better thing in America than our democracy. And the American intelligence community months ago reached the unanimous conclusion that Russia intentionally attacked our democracy, that they engaged in a cyber attack intended to influence the outcome of our 2016 presidential election. I can't think of a more brazen attack on what it means to be American than to have a foreign adversary intentionally influence the outcome of our election. And so I'm very pleased both with President Obama's actions today and to hear support for his actions from both Republicans and Democrats in Congress. And I look forward to working with my Republican and Democratic colleagues on the Foreign Relations Committee and throughout Congress to strengthen these sanctions and to sustain our tough actions against Russia to make sure they pay a price for trying to influence our elections.
Senator, are you surprised at all that the statement from the president-elect does not even reference the sanctions as to whether they are a good measure or not, whether he intends to keep them in place come January 20th? Do you see it in the same way that my colleague was just describing it, that this is an attempt to buy him some time?
Well, I hope he takes his time. I hope he actually does take seriously a briefing from our senior intelligence officials. He's previously brushed them off and suggested that they don't really know what they're talking about. He's made previous public statements in which he said that we don't really know who's responsible and that it's hard to understand and that these attacks could have been carried out by someone lying in their bed. Laughable statements that suggest he frankly doesn't really understand how sophisticated our intelligence community is at understanding the fingerprints left behind by cyber attacks on America, on industry, on our military complex, and on our elections. I also frankly think we need to work together, Republicans and Democrats in Congress and President-elect Trump, to secure our elections going forward. We still have some real vulnerabilities to cyber attacks in this country, and we need to do some hard work together to invest in making sure that we don't face this same problem 2 years from now when we have our next election.
Senator, we know that Donald Trump is not alone in this. We've heard from other members, colleagues of yours on Capitol Hill, members of Congress, saying that this is a distraction, that what the Democrats and what President Obama is doing, trying to drum up this Russian hack, has been a distraction for the Democrats losing in the general election. But more importantly, we haven't seen, the American public has not yet seen any definitive evidence that Russia was in fact behind this hacking.
Well, there is definitive evidence, and Eamon, I look forward to the hearings that we're going to have in the Foreign Relations Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and the Intelligence Committee to lay that evidence out in a classified setting in front of members, both Republican and Democrat of the United States Senate, and then in summary form, we will declassify and make available to the public. And that's one of the things President Obama announced today, is that there will be summary reports released by the Department of Homeland Security and other federal entities to lay some of that evidence out. Look, the classified evidence that's been presented to members of Congress shouldn't ever be fully revealed to the public because it does rely on critical sources and methods that our intelligence community used to reach these conclusions. But I'm convinced, and I frankly think Republican leaders have spoken out today and in recent weeks to show that they're convinced that this is an important issue. Republican leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Speaker Paul Ryan have supported Obama's actions and have said that there needs to be hearings and legislative action to make sure that we take strong enough action against Russia. If President-elect Trump doesn't take that seriously, I think he's in for a surprise when he becomes president a few weeks from now and discovers that there is strong bipartisan support for action against Russia's attack on our elections.
So Senator, do you look at Donald Trump as becoming increasingly isolated on this particular issue, given the fact that, as you mentioned, there is some bipartisan support for an investigation to Russian hacking? There's obviously the intelligence community that's out there. Russia right now, he's gotten a slightly warmer relationship with Vladimir Putin than the outgoing president. Who is he feeling the most pressure from? And do you see him changing his positions at all?
Well, I'm hopeful that he will change his position. In recent days, senior Republican senators McCain and Graham joined Democratic Senator Klobuchar in a trip to a number of our allies, Estonia, a Baltic state, NATO member, as well as Georgia and Ukraine. I led a bipartisan delegation to visit Estonia and Ukraine and the Czech Republic back in August, and many Democrats and Republicans have visited these countries in order to assure them that the irresponsible statements by Donald Trump when he was a candidate, suggesting that he might walk back our support for NATO, suggesting that he might sell Ukraine down the river in some deal with Putin after being installed as president in January. I don't think you're going to see a lot of bipartisan support for some of the more outrageous suggestions made by Donald Trump in the campaign. And it is my hope that he will hear statements made by a wide range of Republicans and Democrats as they have traveled to Eastern and Central European countries as a suggestion that he should take a deep breath, get a real briefing from the intelligence community, and reach the conclusion many of us have reached on our visits to our allies, that standing up to Vladimir Putin is in America's interests.
All right, Senator Chris Coons, we're going to have to leave it there.